This is the After the Glass Break series, and I'm your host, David Harrison. Throughout this series, we'll take a candid look through the lenses of culturally diverse technology leaders to discuss the rise through the glass ceiling and what happened immediately after the glass break. Today, we have a special show, The Power of Women in Tech. Instead of one guest, I have a panel today. Allow me to introduce you to andMarica Sterling, who's a senior technical delivery leader here at BottleRocket, Tracey Francis, who's a senior vice president here at BottleRocket, and Amanda Chappell, who's a senior manager of iOS development here at BottleRocket. My esteemed guests, welcome to the ride.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is going to be an incredible show today because we're going to touch on things as the title kind of precluded on women in tech and why is it so hard to grow the numbers in this space? And then what are the stories and how do we go ahead and delve into some of the issues or the ceilings we have to break to get in? And then once those ceilings are broken, how do we continue to break the ceilings to have them rise? So with that, let's just start off with general introductions and why in the world did you get into tech anyway? So Tracey, why did you get in tech?
My mom was a great role model for me. She actually worked for American Airlines in their information technology department. And I just saw her doing it and thought that's what women did. I didn't really realize that it was so unusual. And she got me a computer when I was about 10 years old, a TRS-80. And I started writing programs around that time and really never stopped. I was writing programs in high school. I was probably the best developer in high school. I mean, not that anyone else was really doing it. It wasn't really until I got to college. There was only 4 women in my degree department out of like over 100 people. And I was really shocked. I was like, how can there just be 4 women? What's happening? And that's kind of when I finally realized that this is unusual. So yeah, my mom inspired me and I just never looked back.
Oh, interesting. So Marica, what's your story? How did you get into tech?
I didn't start out wanting to be in tech. I actually started out wanting to be a pediatrician. And in high school, I took an internship at one of the hospitals here and decided that I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to have to deal with the mortality aspect of it. So I had to reassess my life goals. And it was, how do I still have an impact to help people? And where can I make the largest impact? And at the time, I was in high school like Tracey and really enjoyed my computer science class, and I was good at it. So I figured that I could make things and make tools and inventions that could help improve people's lives. So that was going to be my contribution to society and my intro into tech.
Nice. Amanda, let us know your story here.
Yeah, so a little bit similar to Tracey in that I didn't realize it was such a male-dominated field until I got to college. My grandfather bought me we bought our family a computer, and then for one of my birthdays, we got like a how to program in Visual C++ in 21 days because I was going to write a video game. And so this was in middle school. And so I was like really excited about that. And that kind of started me off on like getting very excited to solve all those little puzzles that you come across in code. And then in high school, I was able to take like a computer science course like every year of high school. And my teacher in high school was a woman. And so it just never occurred to me that it wasn't something that was just equally popular with men and women. Like my class in high school had a lot of women in it. And so when I went to college, it was kind of eye-opening when I was one of like 2 women in all of my classes. But I was just really excited to solve problems, to build things. And I initially wanted to write video games, but switched over into mobile stuff. And it just those solving puzzles drives me a lot.
So it seems to me there's a common theme here with 3 of you. You were introduced to this world at a young age, and you kind of grew up in it, right? So it gives you kind of an advantage to understand that, hey, this could be something I would like to do holistically. But now you're really trying to get into the business. So what was that like, going through the interview process and trying to get past those first glass ceilings with trying to get people to recognize you as a contributor in this space and not kind of weeding you out because you are female in this space? So Amanda, tell me, how was that first interview? How did that go for you? Like, what was the first thing that you recognized when you tried to actually get a job in this space?
It was hard. I interviewed at a lot of places. I tried to get internships almost every summer that I was in college, and I never got one until the summer before I graduated. And I'm pretty sure the only reason I got that one is that my wife was working there at the time. And so, yeah, it would just seem like everywhere I interviewed, somebody else was getting the job and not me. I didn't know what I was going to do next if I got turned down again.
Yeah, it's a tough road. Now, Tracey, your parents, your mom was in tech. So what was your first interview like? Now, you've had a role model from outside of the business.
Yeah.
But now you're going into the business. What was that like?
Well, what was interesting to me, it was the first time I was really thankful for my name, because my name is it could be a guy's name or a girl's name. So I actually got a lot of like interviews, and you could tell when I would get there, though, they weren't expecting me, because I'd been, recommended by my college professors and all of this other stuff. So I kind of had to overcome that quickly in a meeting and act like I didn't understand why they were a little surprised. But I went through a lot of different interviews, and I think especially early in my career, it was really hard to, it seemed like I had to really work twice as hard as my male colleagues to really be seen as equals to them.
Interesting. Now, Marica, you took a different path here, because you didn't go out and start immediately in this space. You started somewhere else. So what was your journey like trying to get into this space, considering where you were starting from?
Well, it wasn't from lack of trying. So unlike Amanda, I had internships every summer, including my freshman year, somewhere different. And that was intentional, because my goal was to try and explore as many different facets of IT as you possibly could. I would often refer to IT as being like the medical field, because people think that, hey, you just deal with software or you just write this code, not knowing that there's a business side of it. And there's also hardware, and you have different facets and different components like engineering. And most people aren't aware of that. So I wanted to figure out where, especially since I was new to this space, where would I fit best? Where would I excel? Where would I thrive? What would I enjoy as an individual? So I interviewed in the communication space. I had 2 internships there. I had an internship with an automotive dealership. I had one with the railway. And so giving me those different perspectives, one of the things that I came out of is that I did not want to sit in front of a computer and code all day, every day, but I was finished with my degree. This was my senior year, and I wanted the experience, but my personality didn't necessarily align. And one of my professors says, "You're going to hate this." And along the lines, I see where they were coming from. But at the time in which I graduated was when the world of tech was turned upside down with the .com situation. And even though I had the credentials and I had the degree, I didn't have the experience. So I was competing with not only women, but men who had 15, 20 years of experience and were taking entry-level jobs, to where someone like me who just had internship experience didn't have an opportunity to get the jobs. I was interviewing for them, but like Amanda, I was getting beat out by the people that had years and years of experience. So I ended up doing the job doing QA, and that was the first job that I could find. And then I got an opportunity to do sales. And it was software sales. I figured if I could just get my feet in the door, then, I could excel and grow in the company that I always dreamed of being with. That didn't work out so well. Sales is not my forte. I learned a lot of great skills from it that I've been able to build upon. And it also opened up the door for me to go back to graduate school, which I got the business side at that point and the technical side. And it once again opened different doors for me, because a lot of people that have the business experience don't understand the technology pieces, and that worked out to my benefit. So it opened up a managerial position. And then from there, I was able to lead a software support team because they didn't have the people there that had the skill sets that could be at a leadership level that could do both. Then ended up being a business analyst, which was my dream job. And then from there, just ended up morphing and growing into either the product management space or as I'm doing now, a technical delivery lead, and also being a solutions owner, because that's a key niche space, knowing both sides. So my journey may not have been the typical one, but it was one I wouldn't change.
Very nice. You know, it's interesting between the three of you, the parallels of the path, right? A lot of times we tend to ignore the path and look at the end. It's the iceberg principle, as you all know. You know, see you guys here today and see where you are today. You think, oh, they've been here, they've made it easily through the annals and the trials and tribulations that typically exist, but we know better. We know better. So, Tracey, talk to us about understanding being heard. Like a lot of times when you're in the room and you're not of the male persuasion, how are you being heard today? And what were some of the obstacles you faced at being heard?
Yeah, when I was younger, I didn't necessarily have the coping skills to deal with it. But what would happen when I was younger was I would say something, and I might have had a different tone or something like that because I'm really trying to get my point across, and I think I'm the smartest one in the room. But what was happening is they weren't listening, and some other male colleague would restate what I said, and then he would get the credit for what I said. You know, now that I'm older, first of all, I'm gonna try to be a little bit more calm all the time because that just helps me. I don't know if that helps everybody else, but I also will be an advocate for other women in the room. So if I hear someone made a point, and then someone else goes and restates or resays what they said, I'll just go back and go, oh yeah, that was a really good point that such and such made. So everybody in the room is aware that that idea was original by somebody else, and you can expand on it, but that was her idea. And so I try to find advocates in rooms that, you know, in a meeting or something, or I'll just point it out if I see it. And then I'm not afraid just to speak up if what I'm being said isn't heard, and I am an introvert, so sometimes it's hard. But I will speak up. I will try to restate what I said, and I will call someone out if I think that they're not hearing me or not listening. So I think there is some different types of tactics that women have to use, because we don't want to, I mean, we have to be heard. And sometimes a man can be an advocate for you as well. It doesn't have to be another woman. So make sure you find those allies in meetings, and you can even talk to them after the meeting. You could say, hey, I noticed that you restated things I said. You know, did you have, you know, a reason? Was I unclear? You know, when you do that, that kind of undermines what I'm saying. So if you have those one-on-one conversations, you can also help coach one of your colleagues without doing it in front of everybody else.
That is interesting. One thing you said in there around getting allies and getting people in your corners is an important, especially when you're in a minority class, like we all are on this call.
Mm-hmm.
It allows networking to happen. It
Mm-hmm.
allows adoption and allows acceptance to happen, which is something critical in the roles that you all play today. One of the roles you all play today is leadership. And in leadership, as a female in leadership and driving male counterparts to be accountable, you can come across kind of harsh. So Amanda, can you take us through some of that and get an understanding of how today you deal with those differences and how you can bring teams together, being in the position that you're in?
Yeah, so you know, similar to Tracey, when I was younger, I didn't have the same coping skills that I feel like I have today. And like a lot of women, I think, I got feedback on my reviews that I was being abrasive, and that I needed to kind of like watch my tone in these meetings. And so, you know, I took it to heart really. And I thought like, oh, I really need to try and watch how I'm speaking. And then I kind of quieted myself, which I don't recommend being your response to that. And at my next review, I got called out saying that I'm too quiet. Like, why aren't you speaking up in meetings? We want to make sure we're hearing your opinion. And so I had to do a lot of self-reflection and sort of figure out like, how do I be heard? How do I be confident in the room and not try to like rub somebody the wrong way. And so I think there's a lot of skills that I think people use, especially have to learn as they get up into higher levels of leadership. I just feel like I had to learn it a lot sooner than my male counterparts, like doing a lot more listening than speaking, and trying to allow for the disagreements to happen so that you can hear both sides of the point before you chime in. And those are things that I feel like my male counterparts weren't necessarily doing at the same level when I was like early leading projects, but they were getting advanced. And so, I mean, I appreciate that I learned those lessons because it's really helped me in my role as a manager, because now I'm coaching others in that. But it was something that I had to go back and forth on and then really hit both ends of the spectrum as I was trying to find a way to be heard.
One of the things you just mentioned in there is something that is tough, and I think it needs to be said, is that at no point in time your male counterpart has to acquiesce. And what I'm hearing here is that there's a lot of acquiescing on your side of the house as a female within a group setting. And to me, that's a bit troubling. That's one of those glass ceilings that we all need to be focusing on and understand how to break those glass ceilings, because women in tech matter. So, Marica, can you help us understand why do women in tech matter?
Well, it speaks to the diversity aspect in general. When you have a diverse group of people, whether it's ethnicity or gender or whatever the situation may be, having the mix provides different viewpoints and different functional points even for the things that you consider for solutions. So we're all problem solvers, but nobody solves the same problem the same way. And having a viewpoint of a woman, because we analytically think differently, is critical to being able to fill in and provide solutions to some of those gaps that may not be thought of. As a business analyst, one of the things that I would coach the other teammates is one, you're not going to find every solution to every problem that's going to exist for any release. It's just impossible. It's just not going to happen. But the more people you talk to with the different diverse backgrounds and the viewpoints, always help to make sure that you have the best solution possible and the greatest chance of covering those gaps. And as a woman, with my viewpoints on where things are and where things sit and where our needs are, we're also the voice of the customer base. We make up 50% of the customer base, and making sure that we have a voice, especially being the primary consumers in households, we spend the most money. That's a fact. And just making sure that that voice of the customer is heard when we're building an application or a website or a new device or a new method of technology is critical, because when you don't have that voice, you're missing out on a huge demographic that will be using your product. So you've essentially cut out your customer base. And that's critical when developing these type of solutions.
That's really, really profound. And one of the things you mentioned is the voice, right? Having the voice, having a different opinion, having a more diverse room. But in that diverse room, there's also growth, and there's also opportunities to continue to go up the corporate ladder. And I know this is tough, but I know that there's been time when you've been looked over because of your gender. So Tracey, can you give us a story around some of those aspects when you were trying to get promotion or raise, and you felt that because of your gender, there was bias?
Yeah, this happened earlier in my career, but it was really a blatant example of it. I was I had been working at this company for about 5 years, and I had made it to where they always put me as a lead on projects, and I was helping to design, future architecture and software that we were going to be using at this software company. And I had some really good, close male colleagues that were same year level as me working on the project, but I was in charge of them. I was their lead. And they had a review and they both got promoted. And not only did they get promoted, they got more money than I did. And they told me about it because they were very concerned. They didn't understand why I didn't. And so I went to HR. And I thought, well, our head of HR is a woman. She'll definitely understand. And I talked to her about it. And she gave me the feedback that I needed to take the VP of engineering out to lunch. And I was just like, what? I mean, and I'm like, but my male colleagues didn't have to take him out to lunch. Why do I need to take him out to lunch? And that day I started looking for a new job because to me, if I can't even go to HR and HR didn't even advocate for me, I really wasn't going to have much, headway here. So I just went and decided kind of what you had said, Marika, make sure you find the place where you fit. And that's what I did. I went and looked for a job where I thought, I would fit better and I would have a better opportunity.
That is a very interesting and yet troubling story.
Yeah.
To say the least. There's a lot of unconscious bias that exists when you're in the room and when you're not sitting at the head of the table and you're just at the table. It gives you this feeling of being subservient when you know you shouldn't be. And so, Amanda, can you just help us understand the power that women bring to the table in these discussions and how having a voice at the table is so important?
Yeah, so I feel like there's been times where I've worked in the hospitality industry or like on apps for the hospitality industry, and people don't think about the needs of women as far as designing their apps. And being in the room and being able to advocate, for example, breastfeeding mothers when I'm helping with an airline app, it's not going to happen if I'm not in the room. Like if a woman's not in the room to say, hey, are we accounting for this thing that's particular to women, then nobody's, there's nobody there to account for that. And I'm sure that there are endless examples for all of these minorities where if somebody in the room isn't there representing, then that part of your customer base is not going to be accounted for. And it can go all the way from the start of the design of your app to the finish. At every level, you have to be thinking about that.
Mm. There's a saying on my show, they can't be what they can't see, right? So how do we get visibility to women in tech? So how do we get more acknowledgement that these opportunities exist all the way up to the CEO level within technology companies? So Marika, to help us understand, what would be some programs and some ideas that we can drum up to get visibility? So little Marika say, hey, they do exist.
That's a great question. So there are a lot of different avenues for that. At a corporate level, there are programs for leadership development, for example, that exist. However, they're not as widely known. So at the college level, it may exist, but there are also like 20 under 20 programs, 30 under 30 type initiatives that companies lead that just aren't as widely known. So it's one of those things to where make sure that you're giving the message, hey, these programs exist and they're for you, and making sure that the women in technology that that you're encouraging them to go apply, or that you're telling them that they exist or that they're aware. At the lower levels, educational levels, primary, secondary, there are programs like Girl Inc. to where you can partner up with mentors here in the Dallas and Fort Worth areas if there's something that you're interested in, or whatever area, whether it's computer science or engineering or doing development or game and coding, things like that you can get paired with in order to start fostering that place. There are groups like NSBE that's a National Black Society of Engineers that have educational programs that will feed into some of that. And there's coding programs for girls even. And all of those are avenues that can get the conversation started. There are fairs that take place during the summer months where they're science focused. All of those are critical into getting women used to being in that space, number one, and building the confidence, even in the infancy stages of someone's learning, to know that one, this is something I can do. This is something that a space where I'm welcome and a space where I can thrive. And then just setting them up to be successful in all of these different points, because even once we get into this space as adults, we still need guidance and mentoring as well. And so that's kind of like what we've all hit upon. And Tracey mentioned a great word about advocacy. Where are our advocates in those different levels? And one of the things that one of my former COOs had asked me a question about mentorship, mentoring, and an advocate. And he asked me, where are your advocates at the different levels? And I looked at him and said, well, I have a mentor. My mentor is over there. He said, no, your advocate. Because an advocate is someone on those closed door circles that are having these conversations and making decisions, somebody that's there to speak on your behalf. And these are conversations that you would never know existed or that you would never be privy to. And just making sure that you have allies and advocates at each of those different levels to make sure that you are being looked after as well as you advocating for yourself. So there are a lot of things that can be done and a lot of places that could definitely use volunteers. And it's something different for you as an individual giving back, number one. And then number two, you get to touch things that you might not get to do at work. So I don't get to code every day now, but it's something that I can do in another venue to help teach someone else how to do it, how to think, how to learn, how to be in these spaces and where to go.
That's outstanding. The advocacy part is the key to everything, right? Having the proper advocate, having someone that's basically blowing your horn and giving you the ability to be in spaces that you're not in today, but you're literally there because they're taking you with them, and giving you the ability to then in turn show up and show out, right? That's one of the things that I love about the diversity and the ability to be diverse, that you get the ability to show up and show out. Because as a minority, typically we're not seen as an equal. And so when you show up and show out, then everyone in the rooms go, we need more of that here to keep us balanced and keep us moving in the right direction, which is a critical juncture, I think, for all of us. And so as we get closer to the close here, I'm really curious, from each of my panelists here, what's that one thing that you took from your journey that you would be willing to share to the audience today that can get other Amandas, Tracey's, and Marica's excited about this space? But also, one of the things we always like to talk about is we need to understand where the pitfalls are. And how can I help you avoid the pitfalls? So Amanda, what's that one thing from your journey that you think you can share with the audience here?
I think it's not to settle because something's good enough. I think if you can always ask yourself, either the situation that you're in, can it be better? Is there something I can do to make it better? Or, is there something about how I handled a particular situation that could be better? I think if the point where you decide to settle and just to be okay with the way things are is when you stop growing. And so I think that's important for everybody to remember, but especially women, because so many women can come into this space and struggle with confidence. And so they are okay with settling because it's at least they got in. But I think it's important to remember that you shouldn't settle.
That is very powerful. That is very powerful. And we talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, that acquiescing breeds lack of confidence, and that will get you in a position where you're like, I'm in my little hole, I'm just going to stay here. And you got to get those Superman powers or super person powers, as we say, from the scars of that to continue to grow and harden. So that is very powerful. So Tracey, what is the one thing from your journey that you think the audience would find beneficial?
One thing is hard.
It could be a couple.
Yeah. Well, if it's could be a couple, I'm going to say seeing it, just like you said, seeing it makes women believe they can do it. So if you see women in these leadership positions, you believe you can do it. The other is embracing fear. I mean, for some reason, and Amanda just basically said the same thing, but for some reason, women are we have this inferiority complex. I don't know what it is. Imposter syndrome. That's the word.
Yeah.
We have that imposter syndrome, and you just have to embrace the fear, because we can do the job just as well, if not better, as the men. And you have to believe that. And that's one thing that I have to remind myself constantly.
Nice. Yeah. Belief is true. Fear is false experiences appearing real. You're projecting yourself to the future state that may not even happen. And if you're living in the future state, you can't enjoy the present.
That's right.
So you got to get yourself in the present and always drive from the present forward. So fear is a terrible thing to have. And in the words of the great poet, fear is not real, danger is real, but fear is something we create in our own mind.
That's right.
So, Marica, what's the one thing from your journey that you think can help others through this perilous opportunity of getting through the glass ceilings?
As women, we act as chameleons a lot, and we try to adapt ourselves to either the situation or the climate or the environment that we're in for whatever reason. And my one piece of advice would be authentically yourself. Unapologetically yourself. And the reason I say that is because there are spaces for you, even if it may not be every space, a space exists. So be authentically yourself. One, you will be happier as a person, and then you will be a better employee or a better contributor to whatever project or team that you're a part of in doing so. And they will get the best version of you, and you will also get the most out of your experiences being that authentic version of you.
That is absolutely fabulous. First of all, I want to thank you all for being real candid and opening up yourselves to me on this journey. You know, it's very eye-opening when you're getting things and understanding from a different viewpoint. A lot of times we tend to stand on our own morals and our own position, that we don't give opportunity to see a different viewpoint and why it's so important for diversity to be in that room. I've worked with each and every one of you. I know your capabilities. I would stack you up against any man, any day. And so I do appreciate you joining me on the ride today. Again, I appreciate your candid feedback on this topic. It is very important that we allow and permit women to grow in this space. It is not an ask, it's a demand. They belong, they can do the job, and they will drive outcomes for your business that you would never fathom. Do not stand in the way of progress. Allow yourself to see the other side. Thank you all. Until next time, take care.